The only thing I need to confirm, the woman on the phone said, is whether you're still comfortable not attending the event you funded. For a second, I thought she had the wrong number. I'm sorry, I replied, adjusting my grip on the phone. What did you just say, Mrs. Cole? Her voice was polished, that calm hospitality tone I knew too well. This is Ava from Lakeshore Events. I'm finalizing details for the Carter-Cole wedding next month. Your husband called yesterday with some changes. I just wanted to make sure we're all aligned before we lock everything in. I swiveled my chair toward the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office. Chicago in late spring stretched out below me, gray river, glass towers, tiny dots of traffic moving like nothing in the world had shifted. Inside my chest, everything had. What changes? I asked. She hesitated. It was small, but I hear those pauses for a living. I own a hospitality group. Awkward silence is practically a language. Well, she began slowly, Mr. Cole told us you would no longer be attending the wedding itself. But he was very specific that your financial arrangements with us remain exactly the same. Venue, catering minimums, hotel block, the river cruise for out-of-town guests, all to be billed as originally agreed. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment and stared at the call screen, as if her name might explain the insanity of what I was hearing. My husband uninvited me from his brother's wedding, and decided my money would stay. I see, I said, placing the call on speaker and setting the phone on my desk. Years of boardrooms and negotiations slotted into place behind my ribcage. Ava, could you tell me exactly what you have on file regarding who is financially responsible for this event? Of course, she said, shuffling papers. Primary contract holder, Olivia Cole. That's you. Signed 3 months ago. Your company, Harborline Hospitality, also appears as the corporate guarantor on the hotel block and the chartered cruise. The deposit we received came from your business account. 8 years. That's how long it had taken me to build Harborline from a single struggling lakeside restaurant into a regional hospitality network, 3 boutique hotels, 2 event spaces on the river, full-service catering, plus management contracts and other properties across the Midwest. To Scott's family, I helped with events. To everyone else in the industry, I was the woman they called when they wanted something done that couldn't fail. Ava, I said, keeping my voice level, what exactly did my husband say about my non-attendance? Another pause. Longer this time. He indicated, she said carefully, that you'd decided it would be less stressful for you not to come. He framed it as a mutual decision. But, she exhaled. I'll be honest, Mrs. Cole. In 11 years of doing this, I've never seen a primary contract holder written completely out of an event while their money stays in. There it was, the crack. Professional concern bleeding into something closer to moral discomfort. If you're still listening, and you've ever felt like someone is happy to use you but embarrassed to acknowledge you, this part is for you. People love your generosity as long as it doesn't come with visibility. Thank you for telling me, I said. Please don't make any changes to the contract until you hear from me again. No cancellations. No approvals. Nothing verbal from Scott overrides what you have in writing with me. Understood? Yes, ma'am, she replied, suddenly all business. We'll freeze everything on our side until we get written confirmation from you directly. When the call ended, the office went quiet. My corner suite on the 31st floor used to feel like a reward. Walnut desk, curated art, the framed first lease of the restaurant I'd rescued when everyone said it was a lost cause. This morning, it felt like a courtroom, walls lined with evidence I'd ignored for years. Revenue reports confirming last quarter's numbers. Contracts bearing my signature on behalf of Harborline. A photograph of our entire staff at the last holiday party Scott hadn't bothered to attend because that kind of thing isn't really my scene. His scene was his family. The last time we'd all been together, 2 months earlier, his younger brother Ethan sat hunched over my dining table, scrolling through his phone with that tight, panicked look people get when they're doing math they don't want anyone to see. We could do City Hall, his fiancée Mia had said softly, eyes flicking between the budget spreadsheet and Ethan's face. I don't need a big thing. I just want to marry you. Ethan shook his head. You deserve more than someone's office and a bad fluorescent light. Scott's mom had sighed dramatically. If your father were still alive, he'd find a way to give you the wedding you deserve. She cut a quick glance at me, then away, like she couldn't quite bring herself to say what everyone was thinking. Maybe Olivia could help. Scott had given me that look across the table. The one that said, come on, be a team player. The same look he used when his sister accidentally overdrafted her account again or when his mother needed a little help with her condo fees. No one ever said the word, but it hung in the air between the casserole and the salad bowl. Money. I hadn't said anything then. I just listened. while they debated whether they could afford plastic chairs instead of Chiavari rentals, whether it was tacky to do cupcakes instead of a cake, whether people would judge if they used a community hall in the suburbs instead of a downtown venue with river views. I'd gone home that night and run the numbers. Venue with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the water. In-house catering with a real chef, not reheated trays. A small block of rooms at one of my hotels down the street. A twilight river cruise the night before the ceremony so out-of-town guests could actually see the city they'd flown in to visit. All in, with my discounts and partnerships, $32,000. Less than what Harborline cleared on a single corporate retreat weekend. The next day, I caught Ethan alone in my kitchen while Scott drove his mom home. "Look," I said, sliding the folder across the island. "If you're okay with a weekday wedding and keeping the guest list under 80, I can make this happen. No strings. No speeches. No brought to you by Harborline banner." His eyes filled before he even opened it. "Liv, we can't." "You can," I cut in. "But I want one thing. Nobody talks about who paid for what. You and Mia get to just enjoy your day. No one needs to be grateful at me every time the hors d'oeuvres come out." He nodded, overwhelmed, and pulled me into a hug so sudden I nearly dropped my coffee. The irony didn't hit me until much later. By insisting on anonymity, I'd given Scott the perfect opening. Now, sitting in my office with Ava's words still echoing in my head, I finally saw it clearly. My name wasn't on any of the family discussions about this wedding. Only on the contracts. Scott had erased me from the event, confident no one would question it, because on paper, I was just the signature at the bottom of a stack of forms. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Scott. "Running late. Don't wait up tonight. Dinner with Ethan to go over some wedding drama. Love you." Wedding drama. I stared at the words a long time, then placed the phone face down. If this were just about a party, I could have written it off as insensitive. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision. One that told me exactly where I sat in the hierarchy of Scott's life. Useful, but optional. I opened my laptop, pulled up our vendor database, and started typing Ethan's last name into the search bar. If my husband wanted to pretend I wasn't part of this wedding, he'd apparently forgotten one crucial problem. You can't erase the person who owns the building. I didn't even make it to lunch before the first crack finally split open. It wasn't Scott. Of course not. It was his sister, Jenna, always the first to sniff out family drama the way sharks sense blood in the water. My office phone lit up with her name at 11:04 a.m. I let it ring twice, 3 times, 4. I shouldn't have picked up. I knew that even then. But betrayal does something strange to you. You want to hear it. You want to know exactly how deep the blade goes. I answered on the 5th ring. "Olivia, thank God." Jenna's voice came out breathless, like she'd sprinted into the call. "We need to talk. Now." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline. "What a coincidence," I said. "So do I." She didn't catch the tone. She never does. "Look," she rushed on, "I heard from Ethan. Apparently some vendors are confused about the guest list. And," she inhaled sharply, "they're saying something about you still being listed as the primary contact?" I didn't respond immediately. I wanted her to hear the silence. "Liv," she continued, lowering her voice like we were best friends sharing secrets, "I know this is awkward. And I'm really sorry if the new arrangement hurt your feelings, but..." "There's a new arrangement?" I cut in. "Funny, because no one told me." That stopped her. Just for a second. "Well, I mean, Scott said you two discussed it." There it was. The first lie. I closed my laptop gently, the way surgeons close scalpels before deciding they're about to cut deeper. "Jenna," I said slowly, "Scott and I did not discuss anything. In fact, I found out I was uninvited from this wedding from a venue coordinator. Not my husband. Not family. A stranger. A beat." Then, the exhale of someone preparing to gaslight. "Liv, you know how you get emotional about these things." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable I could have written her script myself. "How I get?" I echoed. "Jenna, I paid for this wedding." "Gifted," she corrected quickly. "You gifted it." Scott was very clear. A pulse thudded at my temple. "Let me ask you something," I said. "If I gifted it, why was I removed from the guest list and all vendor communications without my consent? Why did I find out from Ava instead of from the people who supposedly love me?" Jenna went quiet. Not thoughtful quiet, guilty quiet. I pressed. "And why?" I added. "Is Scott pretending that I agreed to any of this?" Another pause. I could almost hear her scrambling. "Look, there were concerns," she began carefully. "About, you being overwhelmed. You've been so stressed with work, and the idea was just to erase me?" My voice stayed level, but it hit like a blade. No, she snapped. Not erase. Just simplify. Ethan doesn't want drama at his wedding, and sometimes. You think I'm the drama? I asked. She stumbled. Well, I mean, you do have a lot of opinions. And sometimes it's, like, intense. And the family thought maybe this would be less pressure for you. Pressure. That word felt surgical. Sharp. Purposeful. So Scott, I summarized, told vendors I was unstable, overwhelmed, and stepping away voluntarily. Meanwhile, he kept every dollar of the deposit I paid. That's the version you expect me to believe? Jenna sighed, frustrated I wasn't falling into place. Liv, please. Don't make this bigger than it is. That sentence, that little collection of syllables, did more damage than anything before it. Jenna, I said, it's a $40,000 event funded entirely by me, and I found out I wasn't invited. Tell me how big you think that is. She scoffed. Actually scoffed. Oh, come on, she said. You're acting like the money matters. You have more than enough, Liv. Why does it bother you so much that Scott wanted to handle this without me? I finished for her. Her silence confirmed it. And suddenly, unbelievably, something in me clicked. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. Jenna, I said, standing from my chair, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. And I want a real answer, not the family PR version. She hesitated, but curiosity won. Okay? Whose idea was it to remove me from the guest list? A full 3 seconds. Then, it was a group decision. A group decision. They'd sat together, talked it through, voted, probably, on whether the woman funding the entire celebration deserved to attend. I felt the answer land in my stomach like a fist. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? She asked, genuinely confused. For confirming exactly what I needed to know. She panicked at my tone. Liv, don't do anything crazy, she said quickly. We're just trying to make things smooth for Ethan. We thought keeping you out of the logistics would. I am the logistics, I said. I'm the only reason there even is a wedding. Jenna sighed dramatically. See? This is the attitude we were trying to avoid. You always make things about power. I smiled. A real, cold smile she couldn't see. Only when someone mistakes my silence for weakness. Liv. I hung up. Calm. Controlled. Certain. Because if this was just the beginning, then they had no idea what kind of storm they'd just invited in. Scott called at 7:52 p.m. Not because he wanted to talk. Because Jenna had clearly warned him that I knew. My phone buzzed on the counter while I stood in the kitchen reheating leftovers I suddenly had no appetite for. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. On the 4th, I answered. His voice came through tight, irritated, like I was the inconvenience in his situation. Why the hell are vendors calling Ethan saying there's a problem? Not hi. Not let's talk. Straight to accusation. I leaned against the island, watching the microwave spin the same bowl in slow circles. I don't know, I said coolly. Maybe because you've been giving them instructions you aren't authorized to give? He scoffed, an ugly, dismissive sound I'd heard too many times in arguments he thought he'd already won. Oh, come on, Liv. Don't start. I talked to Ava once. And only because you were clearly too overwhelmed to stay involved. There it was again. His favorite weapon, you're emotional. You're overwhelmed. You're imagining things. Overwhelmed by what exactly? I asked. Booking a wedding I paid for? The one I was supposed to attend? He dodged. Don't twist this. You know family events stress you out. That's interesting, I said evenly. Because the only stressful part so far has been finding out from a stranger that my husband uninvited me from a wedding I funded. He inhaled sharply, like he hadn't expected me to say it out loud. Liv, he said, switching to his patronizing, you're being irrational tone, the money was a gift. You told Ethan it was a gift. You said no strings attached. I didn't attach strings, I snapped. You tied them around my throat. Silence. He hadn't expected resistance. I continued. You lied to vendors about my consent. You told them to remove me from all communications. You instructed them to keep my money while erasing me from the event. Are you seriously going to pretend that's normal? He went quiet again, the way people do when they're calculating. Finally he said, we just wanted a smoother process. And you tend to get controlling about these things. I laughed. I couldn't stop it. Scott, I own 3 event spaces, 2 hotels, and a catering division. Coordinating events is literally my job. But sure, let's pretend you cut me out for efficiency. His irritation sharpened. There are other reasons too, he said. I waited. Your presence can make things tense. I stilled. Tense? I repeated. Because I exist? He sighed, annoyed I wasn't accepting his narrative. Because you intimidate people, okay? You always have to make decisions. People can't relax around you. They feel judged. I felt my pulse kick up, not from anger, but clarity. Scott, I asked quietly, did you tell your family that I agreed to stay away because of my emotional instability? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I let the silence stretch until he finally blurted, look, it was a family call. Everyone agreed. Even Ethan didn't want drama at his wedding. Drama. That word again. A tidy label for what was actually manipulation dressed as concern. Tell me something, I said. Did anyone in your family stop to wonder how I might feel about being removed from the guest list of a wedding I paid for? He exhaled sharply. Honestly? No. Because you weren't supposed to hear about it. It wasn't personal. We just knew you'd blow it out of proportion if you found out. I froze. Say that again. Liv, he groaned, don't do this. Say it. Another long silence. Then, reluctantly, like dragging the words from a place he'd hoped I'd never reach. We didn't tell you because you always make things bigger than they need to be. There it was. The truth. Not that they meant no harm. Not that it was for my own good. Not that they were trying to reduce stress. They hid it because they knew it was wrong. And they assumed I'd stay quiet. Scott, I said softly, remove the frosting for a second. Strip the excuses, the family-smooth language, the emotional manipulation. What you did was simple. I let each word land. You stole my money and erased me. He snapped instantly, defensively. Oh my God, no one stole anything. You offered. We accepted. End of story. You don't get to buy your way into everything. I blinked. Slowly. Buy my way in? I repeated. Into a wedding I paid for because your brother couldn't afford it? That's not fair, he said quickly. You know Ethan feels embarrassed about the money difference. He didn't want you overshadowing him. I went still again. A new realization clicking into place. So I wasn't uninvited, I said quietly. I was removed because my presence would embarrass him. Silence. Heavy. Dense. Guilty. It wasn't just him, Scott admitted finally, his voice low. Mom thought it might be less awkward if you weren't there. I closed my eyes. His mother. Of course. The woman who once asked me, at Thanksgiving, if running restaurants counted as real work. The woman who made a point, every holiday, to tell me how proud she was of Scott's career stability, despite the fact that my income covered our mortgage, his car, and the family vacations she frequently invited herself on. And now, she didn't want me at the wedding because I made her feel small. Liv, please, Scott said suddenly, shifting tones again, sensing me pulling away. This is getting out of hand. Just drop the vendor thing. Stop calling people. Stop digging. Let's not blow up the wedding. We can get past this. I stared at the darkened window in front of me, my reflection faint, unfamiliar. Scott, I said quietly, I haven't even started. I heard panic slip into his voice. What does that mean? Liv? Don't. I'll talk to you when I'm ready, I said. Until then, don't speak to any vendors. Don't call them. Don't impersonate me again. I will handle this. He tried to interrupt. Liv. I hung up. Then I stood in my silent kitchen, heart steady, mind sharper than it had been in years. Because now I knew exactly what I was up against. Not one betrayal, but a united front. And if they wanted to wage a coordinated attack, they'd just forgotten one thing. I fight alone far better than they planned together. By the next morning, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is noisy, chaotic, exhausting. What I felt now was something sharper, cleaner, almost cold. Clarity. My phone began buzzing at 8:17 a.m., first with an email notification, then another, then another. I poured myself coffee, sat at my dining table, and opened them one by one. All from vendors. All confused. All circling the same question. Who is actually in charge of this wedding? Perfect. The first call came from the florist, a woman named Hallie I'd worked with before on corporate galas. Olivia? I'm sorry to bother you so early, she began. Her voice was tight, careful. But yesterday evening, I received instructions from, well, someone. And I just want to confirm directly with you. Someone? I echoed. Who exactly? She hesitated. Your sister-in-law, Jenna. I smiled without meaning to. Go on. She said you'd stepped back and that all communication should go through her now. But we have your signature as the financial guarantor. Obviously, that's a conflict. Hallie, I said, boy steady, don't follow any instructions unless they come from me. Relief rushed into her voice. Thank God. I knew something was off. Send me everything Jenna told you, I added. Every email. Every message. Every forwarded instruction. I want a record. I'll send it right now. When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, coffee warming my hands, my pulse steady. Jenna had overreached. Good. That would matter later. At 9:03, the second call came, this one from the cruise coordinator, a man named Oliver. Mrs. Cole, I'm so sorry, he said immediately, but I need clarity. We received a request to reduce the headcount, modify the menu, and update the billing party. It didn't sound right, so I held everything. Who made the request? He paused. Your husband. Of course. And what did he want the billing changed to? His mother. I let out a short breath, not quite a laugh. Mr. Richards, I said, please forward every detail to me. And freeze all changes unless they come directly from my email. No exceptions. Yes, ma'am. At 9:41, the third call came, this time from the hotel manager at Harborline Riverfront, one of my own properties. That call was different. Liv, he said, skipping all formalities, are you aware someone called pretending to speak on your behalf? I closed my eyes. Who? Your husband. He asked us to move all wedding guests to a cheaper room block. Said you approved it. I didn't respond at first. Not because I was shocked, but because this was the moment the line finally snapped. Scott hadn't just erased me. He'd impersonated my authority inside my own company. Did your staff make any changes? I asked. Of course not, he said. We know your voice. And we know who signs our payroll. I nodded slowly. Forward the call recording to me, I said. I'm going to need it. It arrived in my inbox 4 minutes later. I didn't listen. Not yet. By noon, 5 separate vendors had reached out. 5 different stories. But together, they formed a perfect picture. Scott and his family weren't confused. They weren't acting out of stress. They were trying to rewrite my involvement entirely, financially and logistically, in a way that benefited them and erased me. And they expected the industry to go along with it. They forgot the industry was mine. At 12:22, my assistant, Kara, knocked lightly on the open door of my office. You're going through something, she said quietly. I don't know what it is yet. But 5 vendors have called me directly for confirmation that only you are authorized. Good. The message was spreading. I turned my laptop toward her. Kara, I want you to compile everything into a timeline. Every call, every email, every instruction they tried to issue behind my back. She didn't ask why. She simply nodded. And after that, I continued, pull all vendor contracts for the Carter Cole wedding and highlight the clauses about unauthorized directives on it. And one more thing, I added. Reach out to Lakeshore Events and ask for the full call log, especially anything tagged under Scott's number. Kara paused at the door, studying my face in a way she rarely did. Are you okay? I considered lying, but I'd spent too long lying to myself. No, I said, but I'm awake. Once she left, I leaned back in my office chair and opened my messages. Scott had texted 5 times since last night. Can you call me? We need to talk. Don't stir anything up with the vendors. This is getting ridiculous. Please don't make this worse. I typed nothing back. Instead, I called Ethan. He answered on the second ring, his voice low and cautious. Liv? Hey, I said. We need to talk. He exhaled, a weighted, nervous sound. Yeah, I figured. I've had calls all morning from vendors you and Mia are depending on, I said. And all of them are telling me the same thing. He didn't speak. Someone, multiple someones, have been trying to rewrite my involvement, override my contracts, and alter services I paid for. Still no response. And none of those people were you. Silence stretched like rope. Finally, he whispered, Liv. I don't know what to say. Start with the truth, I said. Did you know I was uninvited? A long pause. Then, I knew, they were talking about it. My stomach clenched. And did you say anything? No. That hurt. Not as much as Scott's betrayal, but enough to leave a cold mark under my ribs. Why? His answer was barely audible. Because Mom said you'd make a scene. I closed my eyes. And what do you think now? Another pause. I think, he whispered, I should have defended you. And I'm sorry. I just didn't want to fight with them. And yet, I said, you were willing to let me fund a wedding I wasn't invited to. Liv, I didn't know they'd actually do it. I breathed deeply. Well, I said quietly, they did. And now we're going to deal with it. Liv, what are you going to do? I stared out the office windows, the city reflecting back a version of me I hadn't seen in a long time, decisive, unshakable, done being underestimated. I'm going to take back control, I said. Completely. Ethan exhaled shakily. Should I warn them? No, I said. Let them feel the ground move on its own. Because the next step wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was precision. And I was very, very good at precision. By Friday morning, the decision was made. Not out of spite. not out of emotion, out of a simple, quiet realization. If they wanted me gone so badly, then I would show them exactly what my absence looks like. At 9:14 a.m. I walked into my office with a folder so thick it barely closed, printouts of every email, every unauthorized directive, every call where my husband or his family pretended to speak on my behalf. Kara had assembled it perfectly, chronological, indexed, color-coded, a roadmap of betrayal. They called again, she said as she followed me inside. The caterer, the venue liaison, the photographer, they're all waiting for your go-ahead. Do you want me to send them the final directive? I looked at the folder, then out the window, then back at the folder. Yes, I said. It's time. She nodded once. Not shocked. Not hesitant. Just loyal. Done. The message went out to all 5 vendors simultaneously. Cease all services for the Carter Cole event effective immediately. Terminate contracts per unauthorized instruction clauses. Release the date to waitlisted clients. Do not reinstate services under any circumstances without MY written consent. And with that, the wedding evaporated, like it had never existed. The first call came 12 minutes later. Not Scott. Not Jenna. His mother. Of course. Olivia, she blurted the moment I picked up, skipping any greeting. The vendors have all dropped out. All of them. The venue, the hotel, the cruise, everything is gone. What did you do? Her voice was shrill, frantic, dripping with entitlement and panic. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. I simply stopped paying for a wedding I wasn't invited to. You can't be serious, she snapped. You can't ruin Ethan's special day over feelings. I smiled faintly. This wasn't about my feelings. It was about your choices. She sputtered. We only meant to exclude me, I finished, while keeping my money. That's not how we saw it. But, I said, it's what you did. She fell silent. And for the first time in 10 years, she had absolutely nothing left to say. Scott's call came next. He didn't sound angry. He sounded terrified. Liv, what the hell is happening? Mom is losing it. Ethan is freaking out. The venue's gone, the hotel refunded everyone, the caterer says you canceled. I didn't cancel, I corrected. I enforced the contracts. You did this? He demanded. You destroyed the wedding? No, I said. You did that the moment you tried to steal my authority and pretend I didn't matter. He exhaled sharply, voice breaking into that desperate register I had only heard once before, when his father died. Liv, please, don't do this. I'm sorry, okay? I handled it wrong. I just didn't want you taking over everything and making everyone uncomfortable. You didn't want me outshining you. The silence that followed was admission. You wanted control, I continued. So you tried to take it by removing me. But the problem is, Scott. I let the pause hang. You can't remove the person who owns everything you're standing on. He swallowed audibly. Please, he repeated. Let's just fix it. Reinstate everything. I'll apologize. We'll talk it out. You can come to the wedding. You can sit at the head table. Whatever you want. Just, don't do this to my brother. I closed my eyes. This isn't about your brother, I said quietly. This is about your family deciding I was good enough to fund your life, but not good enough to be in it. He didn't respond. I'm done being the invisible wallet. Still nothing. Finally, he whispered, Are you leaving me? Yes, I said. And it felt clean. Simple. Like stating a fact instead of making a decision. He sobbed once, a sharp, broken sound, then the line went dead. The last call came an hour later. Ethan. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He didn't beg. He just sounded defeated. Liv, they told me everything. I'm sorry, I said softly. None of this should have touched you. It should have, he said, because I let them do it. I didn't stop them. I didn't defend you. I didn't even question it. He exhaled shakily. You know what Mia said to me today? She said this was the most powerful lesson we'll ever learn as a couple. I closed my eyes. What lesson? That being quiet when something wrong is happening makes you part of the problem. And that family harmony means nothing if it requires hurting the only person who ever showed us real generosity. Something in my chest tightened. I'm sorry about the wedding, I whispered. Don't be, he said. A ruined wedding is nothing compared to a ruined conscience. A few seconds passed. Liv, don't disappear from my life. Please. I won't, I said. But I won't stand beside people who treat me like I'm disposable. That's fair. Before hanging up, he added. And for what it's worth, Mom is still screaming. I allowed myself the smallest smile. Good. 3 months later, the dust had settled. The divorce was in motion. The house was sold. Scott moved back in with his mother, a poetic punishment no judge could have crafted better. Ethan and Mia held a small ceremony in a botanical garden with 30 guests. They paid for it themselves. And they really invited me, with a handwritten card. I attended. I stood in the back, out of the photos, out of the spotlight, simply present. And when Ethan hugged me afterward, he whispered, "You taught us what loyalty looks like." People love to underestimate quiet women, especially the kind who build things, businesses, futures, empires. They assume silence is weakness. They forget silence is strategy. And when a quiet woman finally decides she's done, there's nothing louder,